Welcome back, everybody. It's Dylan Smith with the Defying All Odds podcast, and today I have quite a guest who's defied the odds, broke through barriers, inspired a lot of people. Please welcome Nik Agharkar. Thank you so much for coming.
Dylan, thank you so much for having me.
We met in Vegas.
Yes.
And we met at office hours, and I wanted to know, off the rip, what is your opinion on first impressions and how important they are?
They're incredibly important. I think that people take maybe 0.5 seconds to actually determine who should be in their world or not. I think that it can get us into trouble. I think actually one of my best business partners was someone that I wrote off initially, right? As a gruff guy, a little unpolished, selling insurance. You know what? Maybe this guy isn't exactly for me. But what was interesting about that is the more conversations I had with him, the more layers that I discovered. So I think first impressions are important, but so is having an open mind, right? I think so is having the ability to say, you know what, my first impression maybe was a little off about that person. Maybe I can sort of figure out a framework so that I'm not so harsh with people. That's how I think about it.
That's amazing. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do, how we got here?
Yeah. So my background is a little wild. So my parents came here in the early 70s from India. My father was a chemist. He still is. He has a PhD in chemistry. He went into big pharmaceuticals and was able to be successful enough to get his name on some patents of some pretty big blockbuster pharmaceuticals. And so our lives changed pretty appreciably when I was around 12, 13 years old. And one of the things that we all know about immigrant parents is that they're incredibly focused on education, especially with their kids, right? Yes. I mean, my parents came here halfway around the world, knew no one, barely knew the language, and created an empire. And so education was always drilled into me. And one of the things my mom did, though, is when we started having this money, is she sent me to H&R Block. And she told H&R Block, this kid's going to work for you because H&R Block will give you 6 weeks of free training in taxes.
Really?
Right? And so I learned how to do taxes as a kid. Then I went to law school and I became an attorney and I went into litigation because, as we know, kids, they rebel against what their parents teach them, right?
Yes.
So my parents taught me all about taxes and finance. And I thought, well, yeah, but everybody knows that. That's boring. I don't want to do that. I want to be in court. So I went to court and I was a litigator for the first part of my legal career. And it wasn't until my mid-30s when taxes became more of simply conversation with friends and family that I realized, oh, nobody knows about this stuff. This is very much a secret. And I had this sort of hidden superpower that I could help not only individuals, but then businesses understand their financial life and really organize everything in a way that makes sense to them. Right. And in doing that, what I found is I'm working with so many business owners that have had to overcome so many challenges. And so I actually have started separately a podcast on that exactly to determine what is resiliency, how do we bounce back, and how do we make it in the face of incredible odds. So I'm doing a lot of different things now, sort of helping folks start funds, taking some companies public, working on folks' taxes and mitigating their taxes and their financial life. And then I'm also working with some really amazing people to discover a language around resiliency so that maybe we can teach other people to keep going even when things get hard.
I love that. So with the law background, what do you think being in law has taught you and helped you evolve into the man that you are today?
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting. A lot of lawyers kind of get pigeonholed into the belief that they have to be successful. They have to have the big house, have to have the nice car, when really none of that matters. What matters is if you're actually doing something that you love to do, because one of the things that the law teaches you is how to think. It's really how to think analytically, to ask good questions about the facts that are being presented to you, to test them, whether or not it's true or not, right? That's pretty much the job of a lawyer. And so analysis is such a key part of being an attorney that I think too many get lost in the weeds of being an attorney to understand that skill, just analytics, asking really hard questions, that skill actually translates to life in general and to business writ large. Because if you can really ask hard questions about someone's numbers, for example, right, or their business model, well, then you can actually get to the heart of whether or not this is a good investment or not, whether or not this is a good idea to move forward with. There are so many things that being a lawyer has taught me that I actually had to get out of my own head and ego when I sort of made this career shift more into sort of finance and corporate. It's really more advisory work than actually legal, quote unquote, work. I had to say to myself, I am not worth less because I'm doing something different, right? So many attorneys get into this idea that I'm a big shot, right? And they let that become their identity instead of understanding that they could do more and help more people if they humbled themselves and really just thought about what they want rather than what other people have sort of told them they want as an attorney.
Where do you get your humility from as being in two businesses that could be and are extremely lucrative? How did you be so people focused in such a money driven area?
Yeah, it actually took a midlife crisis. So I was not a nice person for the first, I would say, 35 years of my life. I was very aggressive, very rude to people. I treated people as transactions. I certainly sought to capture as much for myself first rather than give anyone anything. And it led me into a lot of situations that created a ton of conflict. So much so that my wife and I were having, marital troubles. We go to a therapist who does sort of the family of origin analysis, and she says some, not nice things about my mother. And I call my brother, who's a psychiatrist, and I say, "Well, can you believe this woman's saying all these things about mom, about how she raised us, everything else?" And he goes, "Bro, I told you that like 9 years ago. I've been in therapy. What have you been doing?" So that was eye-opening for me because then I went down a rabbit hole of, wow, look, I have a lot of issues myself that I need to fix. And that was actually a spiritual awakening for me because that is really when I started diving deep into meditation, into energy, and into understanding that all of this is mind, right? It's all mental. And that was really what changed, honestly, my life because I started realizing that the more I give, the more I get, right? St. Thomas Aquinas once said, give expecting nothing thereof. It is so hard to do, but so powerful because once you actually start focusing on the energetics around you and you start basically making the world match your vision, amazing things happen to you. But it all starts with your mind and your emotions and controlling that. And I'm not perfect at it. I don't know that anyone is, but it's understanding that that's what's necessary to get to that next level. That's what changed for me, was that I had to realize that I am just one part of this giant system. The earth is 14 billion years old, right? It took 14 billion years for us to get here. Who do I think I am, right? That I have any agency here. All of this is energetics, and how you present is what comes back.
How has that impacted your personal life?
I mean, in ways that are absolutely beautiful, but also heartbreaking, because the friends that I had in college, we've mostly lost touch because again, I was a giant asshole, right? So it makes sense. But for me, that's a bit bittersweet because I can see their perspective, but at the same time, I'm no longer that person. And it is sad because I'll probably never get to know those people. And those people will probably never really get to know me. And that is sad for me. But at the same time, it presents an opportunity for me now moving forward for all of the new people in my life to actually meet the best version of me.
That's amazing. And congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So would you argue that that a chapter like that in your life actually is what shapes you into that next level? Because I recently moved to Florida in December, and I was humbled, I was burnt out, I was tired, I was depressed, and I had a moment where I was like, I'm done with all this. I'm done. I'm just gonna go to work. I'm gonna do what I probably should have done first and just save, invest money, stop social media, stop showing up, and I'm just gonna work out and live in my bubble. And it took me a while to get out of it. And now that I've gotten the book, I think the book definitely saved me in a lot of ways, in a lot of big ways. Everybody's asking, how does the book change your life? How has it impacted you? And I was like, it changed my life. It saved me and why I do what I do. And it's realigned me with what I should be doing. And the move has taught me exactly what you said, right? It's not the cars, it's not the watches, it's not the houses, it's who you are as a being, how you show up for people, how you will continue to pour into people. And I think that there's so much power in that. And I would not be who I am or where I am now or where I'm going without that huge humbling experience. So there's so much power in going through that bottom, because the best part is there's nowhere but to go up.
I love that. Absolutely. But the thing is that when you're at the bottom, it is so very difficult for you to conceptualize that the better things are coming. But for me, what I do every time that I lose an opportunity, every time I hear a no, I tell myself there's something much better coming then, because there's a reason I didn't get this opportunity. There's a reason this didn't happen for me. I just don't know what that is yet. And unfortunately, as humans, we live in a linear time environment when that's actually not how time works, right? Time is absolutely universal. It's eternal. There is no sort of set to time as to when things should happen. It happens on the universe's time. And so all we can do is control the controllables and say, okay, well, that one didn't happen for me. Must be something better coming around the corner. But if you continue that belief, those things will come to you.
Absolutely. So you're in a leadership role. You're the top of your business, you're your own boss. Can you tell me how important the difference is? Because I've learned it between a boss and a leader and how they're so incredibly different.
Yeah. I've had some terrible bosses, right? That lead from behind, right? And they tell you, here are the things you need to do. Why didn't you do this? You're failing because it's all your fault. I've even had leaders blame their staff for their own failures. Or those aren't leaders; those are just bosses, right? For me, leaders are folks who turn back and look at their team because they're out front. They're the ones talking to clients, talking to prospects, talking to everyone about their book and about how amazing their team is that supports them, and then turns around to that team and says, what do you need from me to be successful? Because ultimately, that's what good leadership looks like. It's how am I supporting my team and the people that work for me so that they can be successful? It's also understanding and realizing quickly who on your team is just never going to get there. Because one of the things that I've fallen into, and I'm sure you have too, is being too nice to people, right? It's people on your team that continually fail, but they're good people,
Right.
right? And you want to help them,
Yes.
but at the same time, we got to get moving.
Yeah.
So, there's that balance, right? And so to me, and a mentor of mine said this to me is, it's simply not kind. You're not being kind to them by continuing to employ them. It's actually kinder to let them go and find something else where they maybe will be successful, because this isn't it for them. And that's really hard as a leader to understand, but I think that's the biggest difference between a boss and a leader.
I love that. How has being a leader helped you personally and professionally?
I mean, so personally, it's really given me a lot more discipline and accountability, because at the end of the day, it is terrifying when you have people on the payroll and you've got to make it, right? So you've got to have that accountability of, I'm getting up and I'm doing the work at 4:30 in the morning because it has to get done. I don't have a choice. Something we've talked about here today, right? Is that you've got to do the work because there's no one else. You're accountable. And then in addition, it's opened up so much of my life to teaching as well. So teaching my kids now about discipline, about commitment, about hard work, and why that's important. Now I'm living it, and so they get to see that as an example. I think being your own boss is the number one way to make a living. I think I recommend anyone, even people that work for me. I tell them, look, my goal for you is in 5 years, you have your own thing. I do not want you to be employed here
Yeah.
the past 5 years, because I want you to have this experience of building something for yourself.
That's a true leader.
Yeah.
Because a boss would be like, stay.
Because I need you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How has being a father helped you in your professional life?
Honestly, it's given me so much freedom to say, this doesn't really matter. All the stuff that I do in business, in work to make money, that stuff doesn't matter. What really matters is the smile on my daughter's face when she sees me in the crowd at her gymnastics meet, that my little boy, when he gets a hit in Little League, sees me on the sidelines, because I didn't have that. My dad was never around, right? He was always working. Again, I don't blame him for that. They're immigrants from India. They had to, right? He had to do what he had to do. But at the same time, I made a promise and a commitment to myself that I would always be there for my kids, and that I'm able to show up and do that because I do make my own hours, because I do have my own thing, is so incredibly fulfilling to me.
I as a guy who didn't have a father for a very long time, I wanted to thank you for showing up as the way you do as a father, because I'm thanking you on behalf of your children, but I'm thanking you as the kid who didn't have a father. So thank you for showing up the way you do as a father. And the power of a present father, you, as somebody who's not had it and then had it, I hope you can understand the level of the impact that you're creating, but I don't think that I could ever share with my second adoptive father the impact that he's had. I wouldn't be the man I am today without him. And um, the leaders, like, I'd love to talk about absent parents, because I had an alcoholic father who wasn't in my life, and he is now trying to come back in.
Hmm.
And I remember that I find so much power in two perspectives in life: what exactly to do and what exactly not to do.
Mm.
And when I was disconnecting and burning my bridge with him, I had said, I wanted to thank you for showing me exactly what not to do, because I find so much value in learning and seeing what I don't like. Because I don't, like, I don't have to go do it to realize I don't like it now. Like, that's valuable. But then with my father and people like you who I admire, showing up as the way you guys do as fathers is showing me exactly how you should and what I do appreciate and how I want to show up as a father. I just met my godson on Sunday, and it's the first time I've ever held a baby. Like, my whole life, I've held babies, seen pictures of babies. I'm like, cool, it's a baby. I held my godson and I just melted. I was crying. I was like, I get it. This is like one of the most beautiful life moments. And for me, life is showing up for people that you care about. Can you dive into what showing up means to you?
Yeah, honestly, it's answering the call, right? And for me, I don't care what the answer is. So, we have the same mentor, right? Dave. Dave will email out like, "Hey, can you do this?" I feel bad if I have to say no, but invited and never obligated, right? That's
Yeah.
always how we have to feel. But if we can explain, hey, you know what? Next time, hit me up next time. Absolutely, I want to be there for you, right? It's also saying yes when you kind of don't want to say yes.
Absolutely.
That is
Absolutely.
honestly when some of the greatest opportunities have come to me, right?
Yes.
When someone has asked me, hey, can you show up for this? And I kind of don't want to, but hey, you know what? I'm not really doing anything. Sure, I'll come. I'll come to your event. I'll do your podcast. I'll be there, right? And amazing things happen every single time. So my whole philosophy, honestly, since sort of the midlife crisis has been, if I can say yes, I will. Because ultimately life is way too short. And if all of this really isn't real anyway, and it's all just energetics, why are we afraid? I might as well just say yes and step into it and see what happens.
I love it. So it took me a very long time, I'll say 25 years, to genuinely look myself in the mirror and be proud of who I am and where I'm going and who I've become and what I've done. Are you modern day able to look yourself in the mirror and be proud of who you are as Nik?
Absolutely. Now I absolutely am, but it's because I put in the work, internally put in the work. And one of the things that, I get this feedback all the time is I'm extremely coachable because I know there are things that I don't know. There are things that I'm not aware of that I do that rub people the wrong way. I'm a very direct person. I'm a New Yorker,
Yeah.
right? And so there are things that I'm even getting coached on from people in other parts of the world, right? That, hey, you know what? If you say that, some people in the South, they're not going to take kindly to that kind of language. So you have to soften that up. If I came in as a brash, egotistical person, I would say, screw you. That's who I am. If you don't like it, get out of here, right?
Right.
But that only cuts me off from greater opportunities. So if I can just soften that language, if I can make an approach that is better received by a broader amount of people, why wouldn't I do that? And the only reason I wouldn't do that is because I have this belief that I know better than everyone else. What I know and what you know from working in finance is that the market is a very loud voice.
Yes.
It will tell you exactly what is good and what is bad.
Yes.
And so if you aren't listening to people and other people's feedback and all you do is continue with your own stubbornness, you're going to lose.
Absolutely. Can you tell me the power of you've experienced abundance and you've experienced lows. How hard it was to ignore the financial abundance to lean into the spiritual abundance.
I think it honestly, it's the idea that reality, or at least reality as we conceive it, is going to take a while to catch up to your mindset, because everything we think echoes back to us about 3 to 6 months later, right? So it takes time for, once you start changing that mindset and getting those pictures in your head about who you identify as, for those things to come into your life. But that is what is required. It is a suspension of belief and an understanding that all of this happens. It happens. Not that it will happen or I hope it happens. It happened. You have to start thinking about it as it is already complete. The money is already in my bank account. I am already successful. I already speak on every single stage that I want, right? Though, if those are your goals, that's what happens. I'll tell you what, when we were bidding on a house, we moved in the middle, at the beginning of 2022. So this was the height of COVID craziness. We were able to buy and sell a house within 6 weeks. We went on the market in the middle of January. We closed our new house at the end of February. And this was in the middle of the madness. The only reason I believe that we were able to do that is my wife and I, every morning for 6 weeks, would wake up and say, we live at the address we currently live at. Before we even went under contract, before even we could have maybe gotten this house, we just said to ourselves, we live there. That's where we live. And it happens. But that is so hard to do because we live our lives linearly. We are so impatient that we cannot see any way for these things to happen unless this happens, and then this must happen, and this must happen. That's not how life works. That's absolutely not how life works. This might happen, then nothing happens for a while, then something else happens, and then it just starts to slowly build. But the more that you press, the worse it gets, right? It's just like chasing a girl. The more that you pursue, the less you're going to get.
I've learned that every opportunity I've gotten came from my attitude of gratitude. And I did want to extend my gratitude for you coming out here on your Saturday morning to sit down and collaborate with me and connect with me and follow up after Vegas. How has the attitude of gratitude changed your life, and how important is it to any young entrepreneur, any entrepreneur who's actually out there trying?
There are 2 non-negotiable things I do every day. Usually it's workout as well, but unfortunately I've been injured for a little while, so that's gone by the wayside. But it's journaling and meditation. Those are 2 things that I do every day. And in my journal, I always write down at least 4 things that I'm grateful for. And I do that absolutely every single day. And then at the end of my journal, I write 3 times, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and I love you. And those things are powerful. Those repetitive actions are very powerful because it puts you in that mindset to see the good, right? If you've ever thought about, hey, you know what, I want this new car. You think about this new car, and then all of a sudden you're driving, and everywhere you drive, you see that car that you want. Why is that? Were those cars just not there before? No, absolutely they were there before. You weren't paying attention. You weren't paying attention. And so if you pay attention to the gratitude, to the things in your life that are so truly amazing, my family, my wife, the great house that I live in, my wonderful clients that I get to work with, the amazing opportunities I get every single day, that is what I focus on. And everything else just becomes so much easier. Gratitude is the key.
I could not agree more. I wanted to thank you for showing up in life the way you do, as a whole, as a leader, as a boss, as a husband, as a father, as somebody who's going to come sit down on a podcast on Saturday, because I genuinely am friends with people who inspire me. But I did want to tell you that you are somebody that makes the world a better, brighter, better place. So thank you for showing up the way you do.
Thank you for those kind words, Dylan.
Absolutely. And I have 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
What is success to Nik? And then what is impact to you, and how important is it?
So success for me personally is the old Tony Robbins phrase. I want to be able to do what I want with who I want and when I want. That is control over your entire life, right? You get to decide what happens next. And that is success. I don't care if I have $0. I don't care if we are, living in a small shack on a beach in Tahiti. We will make it if it means that we can do what we want with who I want, whenever I want, right? I mean, there's that story of the fisherman who, he goes out and he catches 50 fish in the morning before anyone wakes up, right? And so then he has enough to sell lunch and dinner, and then he spends the rest of his day with his family and doing everything else. And this private equity guy comes to the beach on vacation. He sees this fisherman. He goes, geez, if we scaled this thing, you could do so much more. And then you would have all this much more money. And he said, nah, but I'm not really interested in that. And the guy's like, well, why? Because then if we did this, you'd have more time with your family and you could hang out and you could do all those things. And he looks at me and he goes, that's what I do now. Why do I need more if I can just be content with what I have? So that is absolutely the definition of success to me. You asked me a second question that I'm forgetting.
What is impact to you and how important is it?
Yeah, impact is why I have started showing up. I only recently got on to sort of being on social media and doing more podcasts, doing more media, because I'm realizing that is the only way to have an impact. I am now noticing that there are so many people on Instagram, TikTok, all of these things talking about legal and financial things that they have no idea about, but people are listening to them because they show up, right? They show up and have an impact on these people. So I want to do the same thing with actual knowledge behind it. So I feel like, okay, now I'm called, right? I'm called then to show up and have my voice heard, because it does not serve anyone for me to sit on the sidelines and watch these other guys take victory laps.
And that is a true leader.
Yeah.
I appreciate the way you show up. Thank you so much for showing up for me this weekend. And what is one thing that you can tell your camera that you can leave the audience with?
Keep going. Just keep going. Time is undefeated. If you put in the work, you put in the time, success will come. It's inevitable.
Nik Agharkar, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited to share this podcast with everybody. Where can we find you?
On Instagram, at nikagharkar.com and at Nik Agharkar. You can also find me at my website, crownpointtax.com. It's crown with an E at the end. I'm on LinkedIn. I will hopefully be all over social media very soon.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nick. Lastly, to everybody, this is Dylan Smith of the Defying All Odds Show. Never forget that you are enough and you all make the world a better place. Smile, make one person smile a day. Love you. Peace.